Words of our Lord Sri Aurobindo from the book Letters on Yoga, Part 1, from the Collective Works of Sri Aurobindo, Volume 28, page 214, topic The Environmental Consciousness, subtopic The Environmental Consciousness and the Moments of the Lower Nature. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, these things, that is, self-esteem and depression, etc., usually hide in recesses of the vital or the physical, in which there is not yet the full force of the peace and light. When they are quite driven out from there, they may lodge in the subconscious and send up suggestions from there. Thrown out altogether, they remain in the environmental consciousness and try to act from there. But then they are no longer part of one's own consciousness and are not felt as such, but as something trying to come in from outside. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says one can be free from the low vital movements, but one cannot say that the freedom has been made absolutely complete or secure until the complete transformation takes place. For these things always remain in the environmental consciousness or even at a distance in the universe itself and take any opportunity to come in from there. These forces of depression, dullness of mind are things that wander in the atmosphere and jump upon one without notice. It is often difficult to see where precisely they come from, and often there is no reason at all or any inviting cause in oneself. They have simply to be thrown off as when something falls on the body. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says there is no mystery about the power of lower forces to attack. These things are violent and obstinate in you for a long time, and you were indulging them. Hence, they acquired a great force to return even after you began rejecting them. First, because of a habit. Secondly, because of their belief that they have acquired a right over you. Thirdly, because of the habit of assent and passive response to them or endurance of them that has been stamped on the physical consciousness. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, this physical consciousness is not as yet liberated. It has not begun to be as responsive to the higher forces as the vital, so it cannot resist their invasion. So these forces, when thrown out, retreat into the environmental consciousness and remain there concealed, and at any opportunity make an attack on the centers accustomed to receive them, that is, external mind and external emotional, and get in. This happens with most of the sadhaks. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says two things are necessary. First, to open fully the physical to the higher forces. Second, to reach the stage when even if the forces attack, they cannot come fully in. The inner being remains calm and free. Then, even if there is still a surface difficulty, there will not be these overpowerings. Next subtopic, the environmental consciousness and the subconscious. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, the environmental consciousness and the subconscious are two different things. What is stored in the subconscious, that is, impression, memories, rise up from there into the conscious parts. In the environmental, things are not stored up and fixed, although they move about there. It is full of mobility, a field of vibration or passage of forces. Next, Chapter 10. Chapter 10, topic The Subconscious and the Inconscient. Subtopic The Subconscious in the Integral Yoga. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, in our yoga, we mean by the subconscious that quite submerged part of our being in which there is no wakingly conscious and coherent thought, will or feeling or organized reaction, but which yet receives obscurely the impressions of all things and stores them up in itself and from it too all sorts of stimuli of persistent habitual movements, crudely repeated or disguised in strange forms, can surge up into dream or into the waking nature. For if these impressions rise up most in dreams in an incoherent and disorganized manner, they can also and do rise up into our waking consciousness as a mechanical repetition of old thoughts, old mental, vital, and physical habits, or an obscure stimulus to sensations, actions, emotions which do not originate in or from our conscious thought or will, and are even often opposed to its perceptions, choice, or dictates. In the subconscious, there is an obscure mind full of obstinate sanskaras, impressions, associations, fixed notions, habitual reactions formed by our past, an obscure vital full of seeds of habitual desires, sensations, and nervous reactions, a most obscure material which governs much that has to do with the condition of the body. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says it is largely responsible for our illnesses. Chronic or repeated illnesses are indeed mainly due to the subconscious and its obstinate memory and habit of repetition of whatever has impressed itself upon the body consciousness. But this subconscious must be clearly distinguished from the subliminal parts of our being, such as inner or subtler physical consciousness, the inner vital or inner mental, for these are not at all obscure or incoherent or ill organized, but only veiled from our surface consciousness. Our surface constantly receives something inner, touches, communication, or influences from these sources, but does not know for the most part whence they came. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says the subconscious is below the waking physical consciousness. It is an automatic, obscure, incoherent, half-conscious realm into which light and awareness can with difficulty come. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says the inner vital, physical are quite different. They have larger plastic, subtler, freer, and richer consciousness than the surface vital and physical, much more open to the truth and in direct touch with the universal. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says the subconscious is not the whole foundation of our nature. It is only the lower basis of the ignorance and governs mostly the lower vital and physical exterior consciousness, and these again affect the higher parts of the nature. While it is necessary to see what it is and how it acts, one must not be too preoccupied with this dark side or this apparent aspect of the instrumental being. One should rather regard it as something not oneself, a mask of false nature imposed on the true being by the ignorance. The true being is the inner, with all its vast possibilities of reaching and expressing the divine, and especially the inmost, the soul, and the psychic Purusha, which is always in its essence pure, divine, turned to all that is good and true and beautiful. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says the exterior being has to be taken hold of by the inner being and turned into an instrument no longer of the upsurgings of the ignorant subconscious nature, but of the divine. It is by remembering always that and opening the nature upwards that the divine consciousness can be reached and descend from above into the whole inner and outer existence, mental, vital, physical, the subconscious, the subliminal, all that we overtly or secretly are. This should be the main preoccupation. To dwell solely on the subconscious and the aspect of imperfection creates depression and should be avoided. One has to keep a right balance and stress on positive side most, recognizing the other, but only to reject and change it. This and a constant faith and reliance on the Divine Mother are what is needed for the transformation to come. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says the subconscious is the basis of much of the lower activities that is now generally admitted. These are the words of our Lord Sri Aurobindo.